Today we're dressing the Union Loomworks custom rug loom. Welcome to Hack a Week. So I've got some 100% cotton rug twine on here for the warp. Got it the other day, and I've got it on the spool holders, and what I'm doing is running it through the thread guide here and through the thread guide that I made here. Come on down, I'll give you a closer look. So all the spools are on here, 28 of them, and the plan is in each one of these stations along here, let's see, I've got some math over here. There are 18 of those, and 28 ends per equals 504 ends that I'm going to run through this thing. And then we'll run them through the heddles. And we're going to run them through the reed. That's called slaying the reed when you do that. Interesting terminology in this stuff. This warp guide on the back beam I made. It's just aluminum, and I drilled it with some 1/8" holes, and then I used a center drill to chamfer all the holes so they're nice and smooth so the thread does not get torn up. So they all come up from the spools. The front row I started at the bottom and worked my way across like so, and now I'm on the back row putting those in place. And I've made this at a slight angle so that the threads can run a little bit smoother. I've seen these that people have made with a straight one. I haven't seen any kind of a video or a picture of one that's 100% for sure from Union Loomworks, because they get lost easy, I guess. So we're going to continue threading this thing up. So what I do is I take a spool that's coming off from the left side of the spool, and I take it up here to this thread guide, which is pretty nifty. You don't have to run it through the hole. You can just go over the top and pull, and it's through. Then we run it up to the other thread guide on the back beam. Now we bring the thread up here, give it a little pull. I'm going to run it through this hole. That's the last row of them. And then pull it through, leave myself a good leader. And then we'll go on to the next spool and the next and the next, and we'll have it all set to actually start winding around the warp roller. Now I've got all the thread coming through here, up through the warp guide. Now I need to attach it to the warp roller and start rolling it up. When we got this, it had a back stick on the warp roller. I don't think I really need that. The back stick was there to attach the warp to and then roll it up. I'll use one on the breast beam up front, but on this, I think I'm going to try something a little different. I'm going to try just attaching it to the peg after I tie all these together. So I'm just going to sort these out now, get all the slack out of everything. Just kind of comb through them with my fingers and get everything nice and untangled. Okay, now I'm just going to take this whole wad and tie an overhand knot in it. It's a bit tricky. Like so. Pull it tight. I'm going to cut off the excess. And what I'm going to do is just split everything pretty much in half. I'm just going to attach it right to the peg like that. And then we're ready to start winding. Okay everybody, time for some math. Very important with all this stuff because I've got all these rolls on there and I need to know how many turns on the warp roller do I need to put on and not run out of warp thread. So I have 800 yards per spool, 2,400 feet. I have 28 rolls. That's 67,200 feet total. There are 504 dents that I'm going to use. That's going to make a 42-inch wide rug. That's 133 feet per dent available to load up from those 28 rolls, but I'm not going to do it all. The warp roller circumference is 2.5 feet. Now that will grow a tiny bit as you wind it up, of course, because the diameter is going to get bigger. But anyway, so 133 feet divided by 2.5, 53.2 turns of the drum. So with all of those loaded up, if I did 53.2 turns, it wouldn't be 0.2, but let's just say 50 turns or so, is going to use up all of that warp thread. And I really don't want to do that. I just want to set it up for making some rugs and then later experiment with some colors on the warp and maybe some different warp. So I want to make about 50 feet of rugs. I want to set it up for about 50 feet of rugs. If I divide that by 2.5, it comes out to about 20 turns of the drum or the warp roller. So now I know how many turns to put on this thing and not run out of thread. So on each one of these stations, I need to put 20 turns. Now I've already got everything loaded up, going through the warp guide and then onto the the warp roller. So I do 20 turns, then I cut and tie it off, which I'll show you in the next step, and then I just leave everything in there. I don't have to thread it again. I just tie it off, move to the next one, 20 turns all the way down the line till we load the whole thing up. Then we get to the really fun part of running all of those 504 ends through the heddles and then slay the reed and then put it over here on the cloth roller. So let's crank up the first one. I just realized that this rolls this way. So what I need to do is actually go down here and hook it on to this peg. And I'm just going to turn it by hand, not with the handle initially, just so I can check to make sure everything lines up nicely. And yes, it does. Just need to go easy. That's 9. Okay, that's 20 turns. I went actually a little bit past it. Now I'm going to take this and cut it right here. Just going to grab all of them at once. Pull it up tight and slice. I'm going to take this end that's coming off from my spools. We're going to tie a knot in that just like we did before. That's going to be for the next section. Cut the end off from that. Just let that hang there for now. Now I'm going to take this piece right here that's going to go through the heddles later, but for now we're just going to tie it off so it doesn't unravel. I know there's an easier way to do this. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect, just tie it off. We're going to stick it there. And we're just going to stick it in place with a piece of tape for now. Just like that. Now I take the next one. I'm going to move my thread guide over. And we do the same thing. Connect that onto this peg right here. We'll start winding until we get 20 turns on that one, and we just do that all the way down. It's going to take a while to do this. I want to leave this thread on my warp guide, so I'm just going to tie this off. And then I can just take this off from the back, and then I can just let this stay back here with all of the warp thread, and the next time it's already through the warp guide. I don't need to do that all over again. We'll tie off this last one. Tape it in place. So next up, we get to run it through all these heddles and then slay the reed. But that's for tomorrow. It's late. This was a bunch of work. I'm gonna go take a break and have a beer. Before we start threading all of that warp through things, there's one more thing to consider, and it's called the set. The set is how many threads per inch you run through everything, the heddles and the reed, and then of course how many per inch that you do. So this is a single warp set. So when you do this, you've just got one above, one under, one above, one under. This is a double warp set. So you've got two above, two under, two above, two under. Now the thing is, the way I set this up, I've got it set up enough for 12 per inch, which is actually too many for a rug. And I've got 18 stations here. So I did a little bit of math and figured if I just go 6 pieces of warp per inch and I do a double set like this, then what I'll end up doing is just basically skipping every other reed when I set it up, and I'm just going to use half of the amount of stations back here. There's 18 total, so what I'll do is I'll just use, like, I'll use this one, skip this one, skip this one, etc. I could even start here and skip this one. And I'll end up with 9 left over when I'm all done, and then I can just thread it all up again and weave some more. The way it's set up right now, it would be 12 per inch. That's almost enough for a very coarse cloth. And that's not what we're making. We're making rugs. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get to work running everything through the heddles and slaying the reed. Okay, more math. Here we go. Since I'm only going to do 6 ends per inch on a 12 dent reed. Remember, a dent is one of the slots in the reed. I have a 12 dent reed. I'm only going to use 6 per inch, so that means I need 252 dents, 252 ends. If I divide that by 2 to split it up between the 2 heddles, that's 126 per. It's also called a brace, the whole assembly. So 126 per brace. There are 270 heddles on each brace. So if I take 126 from that, I end up with 144. Divide that by 2, that comes out to 72 heddles. So I need to slide 72 heddles to the side on each one of these and just not use them, and then I can start threading the loom. I've got the heddles sorted out in groups of 14 because there's 28 ends on each one of these, and half of them will go on this brace, the other half will go on this brace. That way we get the up and down, the shed effect, so we can weave. Now I need to unwind the ones that I'm going to use, every other section. I'm going to unwind them back this way, and I'm going to bring them over the top and over to the front long enough so that I know I can reach the front, and then one string at a time I start working them through all of the heddles. So we're going to just grab every other one and just let it fall down. Now I need to unwind this a little bit gently, and I gotta pull each one out so it doesn't get all tangled up in everything. And I'm not sure how well this is going to work. I'm going to just pull to get some slack. Okay, let's take them up over the back beam and let them lay over the top. Now one at a time, I'm just going to sort them out. Now I need to just pull all these forward. Got a little tangle back there on this one. Caught on one of the pegs. But what I want to do is have enough where they just reach the front beam. Get this tangle off from here. So now that I have them like this, I can just leave them hanging here, and then one string at a time I take it to the back and start running it through the heddles. I'm going to cut the end off this first one. And then we're going to go to the back. I'm going to grab a string that's all the way this way, single it out from everybody else. And take it back here. And we're going to run it through. I'm going to start with the back heddle, so I'm going to hit my treadle to move the back heddle up. And I'm going to take this first one and just run it through the first heddle. And we're just going to bring it forward and let it fall. Now I'm going to do like a 2 up, 2 down weave, as I mentioned, also known as a double set. So I'm going to grab one more on the same brace and pull it through. Now the next one will go on the front brace. Pull that one back. We're just going to pass between the heddles on the rear brace, go to the first heddle on the front brace, bring it through, we'll grab the next one, through the gap, grab the next heddle, pull that one through, and we're off to a good start. We need to do this all the way across, and it's going to take a while. About halfway through the process here, I came up with a new method, and what I do is I run 4 through at a time from the back. So I run 2 through on the back brace, and I can just go like this and pull a leader through. More on the back brace, pull that one through, and just move it over so I've got a little room to work. Then I do 2 through the front brace heddles, give it a little leader. Need a really strong back for this because there's a lot of slight bending over thing. Kind of gets to the muscles. So once all that's pulled through, now you've got 4 at once that you can just grab up and pull. And there you go. This saves a lot of walking back and forth around the front of the loom. All done. Kind of looks messy, huh? Well, it's actually not. That took about 2.5 hours. Winding the warp onto the warp roller, that was about 1.5 hours. So we're at about 4 hours. Now we need to take all these ends and run them through the reed. That's called slaying the reed. And remember, we're doing a 6 dent set, not 12. This is a 12 dent reed, so when I put it through, I'm going to be putting it through on every other one. This piece of tape is where I start, and down at the other end is where I finish. So that's next up. Now we need to run the warp through the reed. I've got a little reed threading tool that I 3D printed. Found it on Thingiverse, of course. We just poke it through like that. We're going to take the first end and we're going to pull it through. Let it fall over the breast beam, and we'll take the next one And we're going to skip one. We're going to go every other one. So I'm skipping one slot or dent in the reed, and I pull this one through, and we just keep doing this all the way across. And we need to remember that we are first threading through the ones that are on the back brace, and then the front brace, 2 of those, 2 on the back brace, 2 on the front brace, because that's the order they're in. So this next one is coming off from the front brace. There we go, all 252 ends through the reed. In 3 places I made a mistake where I skipped one. One of them I had to remove about 14 threads or so and go back and fix it. The other ones I kind of caught as I went. I started double checking myself. So now we can attach this to the bar down here. It's also known as the apron bar. There's not an apron on this. Also called a front stick sometimes, a take-up dowel. Basically it's going to attach to this dowel and then we'll roll it onto the cloth roller. But the first thing I need to do is get the reed pushed back out of my way, but I need to hold all these in place at the same time. If I just push this forward, you can see what happens. The warp just sags, and that's okay to a certain point. But then I need to come back and just start gently pulling them back tight again. I can move it a little more. What I'm after is getting it all the way up against there. Okay. Now we can pull all this through. Make sure we get all the slack out of all the pieces of warp. I've got these all separated out into 9 groups corresponding to the 9 rolls they're coming off from, the 9 sections on the warp roller. And I need to attach them now to this dowel. Normally I would do this up on the top, but this breast beam is warped like this over the years. It's got a bow to it. And if I do it up there, as I roll around, what's going to happen then is I'll have some slack in the middle and it'll be tight out here because it'll all of a sudden have the slack of this warp. It's pretty well warped. In fact, it's about maybe 3/8 of an inch, 10 millimeters in right here. I will probably make a new piece for this at some point. So to get around that, I'm just going to attach this here like this. I'll just tension it right about there. In fact, I could probably take up a couple more teeth like that. So what I'll do here now is pull the dowel up, take these 2 equal sections, pull them up like this, pull them close together, put some tension on it, and then just do a simple overhand knot like so. And I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Actually, maybe I'll do a double overhand. Let's go like this just to help it stay in place. So we'll go around once and twice and then pull it tight. That should stay by itself until we turn it into a square knot later. But for now, that's all we want. So now I'm going to do that to this group right next door to it. Same thing, divide these up. We're going to come around like this. Let's do one at a time. This is really odd doing it down under the breast beam like this, but it's because of that warp. The warp in the wood. Don't confuse that with the warp that I'm tying. And we'll tie this one off. Once, twice, and let's pull that one up tight. I'm going to go over to this one and just keep working my way outwards, back and forth. Okay, the initial tie-off is done. Now what we'll do is just check tension. That one's really loose, that one's loose, that one's a little loose, tight, tight. So now we're just going to shoot for getting all of these in a nice even tension. So to do that, I just give it a pull and tighten up the knot. It's critical that we get them all at a nice even tension. You can get the overall tension by just cranking on the lever here, on the take-up lever, but what we want is even between each group. And of course, as you tighten one, you may loosen another. So you've got to kind of just keep checking them all as you go. Okay, we like the tension. Now we're going to go ahead and turn all these into a square knot by doing one more overhand knot and pull it good and tight. Okay, we're going to trim off the excess. Okay, let's check the operation of the braces and the heddles, which will make the shed. Right now they're in a neutral position, both the same. This is with the back brace up. So there's the shed. I put the shuttle through that way, then I would pass it through. But I actually do it through here in front of the reed. This is with the front brace up, so you can see how they change. So we are ready to start weaving. Well, that's it. It's all dressed, ready to weave. And I've only used half of the dents in this, 252 ends. If you were to string up 504 ends, it would be a lot of work. This took a good 5 to 6 hours of my time to do this. Now, granted, it was my first time through, and I developed a few techniques along the way that sped things up a bit. But easily 5 hours, and if you were to do full up, about 10. That's including winding on, the warp, all of it. So that's about how long it takes. But you can make quite a few rugs out of that much warp, and if you were to wind up 800 yards, you can make a lot of rugs and a lot of runners and other things on it. So it's worth the time. That's how it goes with weaving. It's usually a lot more time to dress the loom than it is to make a single piece. But if it's a big loom and you can wind up lots of warp, you can make many things. So we're going to start weaving a rag rug in the next video. I hope you'll join me for that one. It'll be fun. And I guess that's about it for today. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time.